Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Oh, woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Oh, woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Walking and talking with my mind. Stay on freedom. Oh, walking and talking with my mind. Stay on freedom. Walking and talking with my mind. Stay on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Singing and praying with my mind. Stay on freedom. Oh, singing and praying with my mind. Lord, 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 stay on freedom. Singing and praying with my mind. Stay on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Let's walk. Come on and walk, walk. Come on and walk, walk. Come on and walk, walk. With your mind on freedom. Walk, walk. Come on and 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 talk. Come on and talk. Because it ain't no harm to keep your mind. Freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. Over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more weeping, don't you know? No more weeping. No more weeping over me. And before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my own grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom.
process of working throughout the South and going to jail and getting beat and being in mass meetings and singing, there's one particular song that became the theme song of this movement. It is a powerful song. You can go anywhere in the world today where there is struggle, and you will find this song, and you will still see people in the streets marching and singing it. It is our gift to the world people in struggle. We want to ask you to stand up and cross your right hand over left and sing with us, We Shall Overcome. We shall overcome.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us at Housatonic Community College for our first Martin Luther King celebration. My name is China Bird, and I am the Alumni Association Chair, and I also have the pleasure of serving under the Dean of Academic Affairs at Housatonic Community College. We welcome you to this celebration, and I would like to open up with a video of Nina Simone performing her song Why in 1968.
So hard to find. We're going to leave you with a tune written by Gene Taylor, a bassist. It's a tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King. His son, peace of mind. Oh yeah. Once upon this planet Earth lived a man of noble birth, preaching love and freedom for his fellow man. He was dreaming of the day peace would come on a stage, and he spread the message all across the land. Turn the other cheek, he'd plead. Love thy neighbor was his creed. Pain, humiliation, and death he did not dread. Yes, with his Bible by his side, from his foes he would not hide. It's hard to think that this great man is dead. He had seen the mountains high, and he knew he could not stop. Always living with the threat of death ahead. Tell your parents that better stop and think, 'cause we're heading for the breakdown. Better believe it. What's gonna happen now that the King of Love is dead? Well, will the murders ever cease? Are they men, are they beasts? What do people, what do they think they have to gain? Well, will your nation stand or fall? Is it too late for us all? And did Martin Luther King just die in vain? You know that he was for equality for all people, you and me, full of love and goodwill. Hate was not his way. He was not a violent man. So tell me, honey, tell me if you can, just why was he shot down the other day? It was prejudice, it was hate, bigotry sealed his fate. Go on, cry, cry, your tears won't change a thing. Will my country ever love? Must it kill at every turn? We've got to know by now what the consequences will bring. Yes, he had seen mountain top, and he knew he could not stop. Always living with the threat of death ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, you'd better stop and think, for we're all heading for the brink.
enjoyed that first video clip of Nina Simone with her profound performance after the death of Dr. King. I would like to now introduce you to our leader here at Housatonic Community College, Dr. Dwayne Smith, who will give remarks on the occasion.
What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load. Or does it explode? Good morning, Housatonic Community College friends and guests that are here to commemorate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. Welcome. A Dream Deferred is a poem by Harlem Renaissance writer Langston Hughes, written in 1951. A little over a decade before Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Perhaps not as well known as King's Dream Soliloquy, however, a very powerful poem nonetheless. Mr. Hughes posed the sobering question, what happens when a dream is deferred? The poem, written during a time of great oppression for Black people and on the cusp of the civil rights movement, is forbidding at best and keeps it real. The tenor of the poem is ominous. A dream deferred stink like rotten meat, or it asks, does it explode? Today we find ourselves asking the same question. What happens when Dr. King's dream of equality and unity is deferred? We can witness this in our communities and country, the ramifications when a dream is deferred and even denied. But the good news is that we can all play a role in realizing Dr. King's quest for racial equality and reconciliation. The good news is that specifically Housatonic has a role in creating a more just and equitable society through education. We realize that our work for social justice through education is real and transformative. Many of our scholars are first generation and low wealth, and through education, they can dream and realize a different life for themselves, their families, their communities, and their generations to come. But I will also submit to you, Housatonic, that it has to be more than just getting an education. We must challenge ourselves and then our scholars to speak truth to power, to walk in courage and conviction, understanding that we have a magnificent charge, and that is to develop leaders that will challenge the status quo and will be the change agents that King's legacy represents. So on the eve of Dr. King's birth, let's renew our passion and a commitment to our community, the Housatonic community. Let no dream be deferred or denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Smith, for that great remarks on the occasion. We will now listen to another selection by Mahalia Jackson, who was one of Dr. King's favorite gospel artists. The song is entitled, How I Got Over.
Lord, Lord, Lord. We had a mighty hard time coming on over. You know my soul. Look, I can wonder, how did I make it over? Well, soon as I could see Jesus, the man that died for me, the man that led and suffered, you know he hung on Calvary. The brother thanked him for how he taught me. The brother thanked God for how he taught me. Yeah, thank God for how he kept me. Oh, I'm gonna thank him for he never left me. Yeah, I'm gonna thank him for whole time religion. Yeah, I'm gonna thank God for giving me a vision. Yeah, I'm gonna go to heaven and far. Yeah, I'm gonna count, never get tired. You know I'm gonna count, come around me, hold on. Yeah, I'm gonna sing, glory, hallelujah. Lord, thank you for me. Lord, God did so good to me.
Next week, we'll have remarks on the life of Dr. King from Student Senate Vice President Kelly S. Taylor.
So in the summer of 1944, at the age of 15, Martin Luther King gained early admissions to Morehouse College. He traveled from Georgia to work at the Simsboro Tobacco Farm of Cummins Brothers Incorporated, located in Connecticut, to help pay the cost of his tuition and board. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s autobiography, he wrote a letter of his experience in Connecticut during his train ride back to Atlanta. He wrote, "After the summer in Connecticut, it was bitter feeling going back to segregation. It was hard to understand why I could ride wherever I pleased on a train from New York to Washington and had to change to a Jim Crow cart at the National Capitol in order to continue the trip to Atlanta. The first time I was seated behind a curtain in a dining car, I felt like a curtain had been dropped on my selfhood. I could never adjust to the separate waiting rooms, separate eating places, separate restrooms, partly because the separate was also unequal, and partly because the very ideas of separation did something to me, to my sense of dignity and self-respect. While Mr. King and other students would go to the First Church of Christ in Simsbury, Connecticut to attend services, Mr. King was selected to the religious leader and lead meetings for the group of young men. He felt inspired to serve and contribute to society during this experience. In 2010, MLK in Connecticut was formed by a group of students from Simsbury High School, set out as a mission to research Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s time in Simsbury. With support from the Simsbury Free Library, they created a documentary on Dr. King and the 2 summers he spent working and living in Simsbury during the 1940s. The documentary was featured on CBS Evening News and received national acclaim. But the students saw this is just as the beginning. In 2011, these students formed the MLK in Connecticut Committee, dedicated to building a memorial in Simsbury to honor Dr. King and keep his dream alive. Thank you.
Thank you for your words, Kelly. We will now go into a short clip regarding Dr. King's trip to Connecticut at an early age.
Both King's sister, Christine King Ferris, and Stanford University professor Claiborne Carson have stated that King's experience at the dorm in Simsbury led directly to his decision to enter the ministry. King's own words support this connection. On his application to enter Crozer Theological Seminary in 1948, he writes,
"My call to the ministry was quite different from most explanations I've heard. The decision came about in the summer of 1944, when I felt an inescapable urge to serve society. In short, I felt a sense of responsibility which I could not escape."
In her autobiography published in 2009, King's sister, Christine King Ferris, writes that when her brother returned home, it was clear that he had experienced a sociological and philosophical metamorphosis in Connecticut. She adds that her little brother had become a young man while he was away. Martin Luther King's wife, Coretta Scott King, also referenced his time in Connecticut in a book written shortly after his death. She writes, "My husband would talk of the exhilarating sense of freedom he felt to be able to sit in any restaurant and to sit in the orchestra at the movies in Connecticut." Reflecting back on that first summer in Connecticut, King later wrote,
After that summer in Connecticut, it was a bitter feeling going back to segregation. It was hard to understand why I could ride wherever I pleased on the train from New York to Washington, and then had to change to a Jim Crow car at the nation's capital in order to continue the trip to Atlanta.
Sadly, nothing remains of the dorm in which King lived for those 2 summers in Simsbury. The abandoned structure was demolished in 1984. Across the field, like ghosts from another time, some of the tobacco barns still remain. Down the road you can still see Farm 2. Vacant for many years, it looks different today than it did in 1944. All that remains of Martin Luther King's time in Connecticut are 5 letters, 4 that he wrote to his mother and 1 to his father. The letters seem typical of a 15-year-old on his first trip away from home. He vividly describes the new sights he has seen, and asks his mother to send good food and new shoes from home. But more importantly, the letters convey a sense of surprise and wonderment at a world very different from the segregated South. There is a feeling of freedom and limitless possibility in his letters, a sense that things can be different. Martin Luther King Jr. would devote the rest of his life to the principles of equality and peace. His immense courage in the face of danger, and his dream of a nation in which all citizens are equal before the law, serves as an inspiration to those striving for justice throughout the world. Today, we proudly celebrate Connecticut's link to this great man.
We'll now have a poem read titled Equality by Maya Angelou, read by Ijana Smith, who is the coordinator of the Equity Project here at Housatonic Community College.
You declare you see me dimly, through a glass which will not shine, though I stand before you boldly, trim and rank and making time. You do own to hear me faintly, as a whisper out of range, while my drums beat out the message, and the rhythms never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. You announce my ways are wanton, that I fly from man to man. But if I'm just a shadow to you, could you ever understand? We have lived a painful history, we know the shameful past, but I keep on marching forward, and you keep on coming last. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. Take the blinders from your vision, take the padding from your ears, and confess you've heard me crying, and admit you've seen my tears. Hear the tempo so compelling, hear the blood throb through my veins. Yes, my drums are beating nightly, and the rhythms never change. Equality, and I will be free. Equality, and I will be free. Thank you.
Thank you, Ijana. Now please enjoy by the King Holiday Chorus, titled King Holiday Tribute, 1986.
Washington and
will now have words from Alejandro Valientes, who is the director of the Men's Center here at Housatonic Community College. He will be reading words from Cesar Chavez titled, "He Showed Us the Way." Alex?
I'll be reading a letter from Cesar Chavez to the Mary Nolan magazine on the 10-year anniversary of Martin Luther King. In honoring Martin Luther King Jr.'s memory, we also acknowledge nonviolence as a truly powerful weapon to achieve equality and liberation. In fact, the only weapon that Christians who struggle for social change can claim as their own. Dr. King's entire life was an example of power that nonviolence brings to bear in the real world. It is an example that inspired much of the philosophy and strategy of the farm workers movement. This observance of Dr. King's death gives us the best possible opportunity to recall the principles with which our struggle has grown and matured. Our conviction is that human life is a very special possession given by God to man, and that no one has the right to take for any reason or for any cause, however just it may be. We're also convinced that nonviolence is more powerful than violence. Nonviolence supports you if you have a just and moral cause. Nonviolence provides the opportunity to stay on the offensive, and that is of crucial importance to win any contest. If we resort to violence, then one of two things will happen. Either the violence will be escalated, and there will be many injuries and perhaps deaths on both sides, or there will be total demoralization of the workers. Nonviolence has exactly the opposite effect. If for every violent act committed against us, we respond with nonviolence, we attract people's support. We can gather support of millions who have a conscience and would rather see a nonviolent resolution of problems. We are convinced that when people are faced with a direct appeal from the poor struggling nonviolently against great odds, they will react positively. The American people and people everywhere still yearn for justice. It is to that yearning that we appeal. But if we are committed to nonviolence only as a strategy or tactic, then if it fails, our only alternative is to turn to violence. So we must balance the strategy with clear understanding of what we are doing. However important the struggle is, and however much misery, poverty, and exploitation exists, we know that it cannot be more important than one human life. We work on the theory that men and women who are truly concerned about people are nonviolent by nature. These people become violent when the deep concern they have for people is frustrated and when they are faced with seemingly insurmountable odds. We advocate militant nonviolence as our means of achieving justice for our people, but we are not blind to the feelings of frustration, impatience, and anger which seethe inside every farm worker. The burdens of the generations of poverty and powerlessness lie heavy in the fields of America. If we fail, there are those who will see the violence as a shortcut to change. It is precisely to overcome these frustrations that we have involved masses of people in their own struggle throughout the movement. Freedom is best experienced through participation and self-determination, and free men and women instinctively prefer democratic change to any other means. Thus, demonstrations and marches, strikes and boycotts are not only weapons against the growers, but our way of avoiding the senseless violence that brings no honor to any class or community. The boycott, as Gandhi taught, is the most nearly perfect instrument of nonviolent change, allowing masses of people to participate actively in a cause. When victory comes through violence, it is a victory with strings attached. If we beat the growers at the expense of violence, victory would come at the expense of injury and perhaps death. Such a thing would have a tremendous impact on us. We would lose our regard for human beings. Then the struggle would become a mechanical thing. When you lose your sense of life and justice, you lose your strength. The greater the oppression, the more leverage nonviolence holds. Violence does not work in the long run, and if it is temporarily successful, it replaces one violent form of power with another just as violent. People suffer from violence. Examine history. Who gets killed in the case of violent revolution? The poor, the workers. The people of the land are the ones who give their bodies and don't really gain that much of it. We believe it is too big a price to pay for not getting anything. To those who espouse violence, exploit people. To call men to arms with many promises, to ask them to give up their lives for a cause and then not produce for them afterwards is the most vicious type of oppression. We know that most likely we are not going to do anything else for the rest of our lives except build our union. For us, there is nowhere else to go. Although we would like to see victories come soon, we are willing to wait. In this sense, time is our ally. We learned many years ago that the rich may have money, but the poor have time. It has been our experience that few men or women have ever had the opportunity to know the true satisfaction that comes with giving one's life totally in a nonviolent struggle for justice. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of these unique servants, and from him, we learned many of the lessons that have guided us. For these lessons and for his sacrifice for the poor and the oppressed, Dr. King's memory will be cherished in the hearts of farm workers forever. The piece is called He Showed Us the Way by Cesar Chavez.
Take my hand, lead me on, and let me stand. I am tired. To the light. Oh, take my hand, precious Lord, and lead me on.
And now we'll have a poem read by China Bird. I have only just a minute by Dr. Benjamin E. Mays.
Thank you, Alex. The poem I will read by Dr. Benjamin E. Mays. Dr. Benjamin E. Mays was the sixth president of Morehouse College and a teacher and mentor to Dr. King. He also gave the eulogy at Dr. King's funeral. This poem I heard recited many times in my youth from a Baptist minister that I was raised under, who was also a civil rights leader, and it's one of my favorite poems. The poem states, I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it, forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. And I'm thankful for the minute that Dr. King used for us to have freedom and civil rights, which we are continuously fighting for. But I'm thankful for the mountain that he climbed for us. I will now introduce Representative Brandon L. McGee. Brandon L. McGee represents the towns of Windsor and Hartford. He's also been a mentee of Rosa Parks, who was also a civil rights leader. He is also the head of the Black and Hispanic Caucus, In Hartford, Connecticut, Representative Brandon McGee.
Thank you so much, China, and to those of you who spoke before me. And I know many of us are multitasking, and welcome to the new normal. I also would like to thank the entire committee for this opportunity to speak before you, and also to my fraternity brother, the distinguished president or executive director, Dr. Dwayne Smith, for his friendship and his leadership there at the college. Just by way of announcement, and I know I only have a couple minutes, and I promise I'll be brief. I recently stepped away from the legislature to work on Governor Lamont's reelect campaign. So I resigned as of Monday of this week as state representative for the 5th Assembly District, serving communities in Hartford and Windsor. It's been a long 10 years, an amazing 10 years serving. However, my work does not conclude in the legislature. I'll still be fighting on behalf of all of our constituents, especially those that I've represented these past 10 years. So again, thank you so much, China, for that wonderful introduction. Martin Luther King Jr. Is the most quoted Black man on the planet. His words are like scripture to you, and yes, to me too. His name is evoked, his speech referenced during every racial crisis we confront. He has become the language of race in and of itself. He is, too, the history of Black America in a dark suit. But he is more than just that. He is the struggle and suffering of our people distilled to a bullet in Memphis, Tennessee. King's martyrdom made him less a man, more a symbol, arguably a civic deity. But there are perils to hero worship. His words get plucked from their original contexts, his ideas twisted beyond recognition. America, these United States, this America, this world has washed the grit from his rhetoric. Today marks what would have been Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s 93rd birthday. And we often think about the famous "I Have a Dream" speech when remembering Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy. What I want you to do is not only just honor that speech and his history as being a champion for change, I want to suggest that we move beyond that one speech and that one idea of him being our hero into a broader interpretation of the ideas of Dr. King. Dr. King urged Americans to raise their voices and to be honest about the limitations imposed upon people, Black people. The Black Lives Matter. Many of you are familiar with that movement. The Black Lives Matter movement campaigns against violence and systemic racism. That too, King anticipated that moment or that movement in many ways during his time on this earth. And so I think it is extremely important. We're in a space of higher academia, and we are grooming our leaders, developing our leaders for social change. Young people, please continue to organize. Please continue to be deeply disciplined and trying to leverage your authority to figure out a way to resist white supremacy and challenge inequality. Dr. King showed an appreciation for his days. He really understood the struggle. And the struggle that Dr. King went through allowed the nation to reflect on the ideals he left behind. Dr. King's steadfast commitment to the causes of equality and justice continue to transform the world. I still, and at my ripe age of 37, I still draw inspiration from his deep-rooted belief in service. As he said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And so I'm asking each and every one of you on this call today, please continue to commit yourselves to racial justice. Please commit yourselves to racial justice, commit yourselves to racial equality, commit yourselves to making sure that every element of our community is supported. Happy Martin Luther King celebration. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Rep. McGee, for your wonderful words, inspiration. We appreciate you being our keynote speaker today. As we close our program, we would like to just make sure that we've saw so many of you also experienced what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. has paved. He paved the way for most of us, for all of us, despite our race, religion, our social economic disabilities, gender. Regardless of that, we on this call as a community, as a nation, must stay committed and contribute to his dream, making his dream, that vision, a reality. We still face strife, racism, inequalities throughout education, employment, and other systematic infrastructures. But what we must do is stay committed to the action, resting on hope, prosperity, for a future that supports all members, particularly those marginalized groups. I pray for wellness, strength, good health, and that we will pledge on this day to make that change. I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, our panelists, our members that are joining as attendees. We really appreciate you joining us this time around, and we ask that you have a wonderful Martin Luther King holiday. Be well. Thank you so much. Take care.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure, we will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory.
Hands to the heavens, no man, no weapon formed against, yes, glory is destined. Everyday women and men become legends. Sins that go against our skin become blessings. The movement is a rhythm to us. Freedom is like religion to us. Justice is juxtaposition in us. Justice for all just ain't specific enough. One son died, his spirit is revisiting us. True and living in us. Resistance is us. That's why Rosa sat on the bus. That's why we walk through Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots, we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, glory, glory, glory. Oh, glory, glory. Now the war is not over. Victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. And then when it's all done, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory.
now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. No one can win a war individually. It take the wisdom of the elders and young people's energy. Welcome to the story we call victory. The coming of the Lord, my eyes have seen the glory.
One day